Let's go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be talking about a couple things. I'm going to be sharing what I consider now to be my hybrid patient experience. I used to say I came from the patient perspective, but honestly, once you've worked in healthcare, I worked at Duke Hospital. Once you've worked in healthcare, you're no longer really the innocent eyes of patients and families anymore. So now I'm sort of a hybrid of a professional and a patient. We're going to talk a little bit about patient-family-centered care, patient-family engagement, and patient experience today. We're going to touch on something called patient activation. How many people here are familiar with patient activation? Okay, so I see a smattering of hands. Good. And then most importantly, we're going to talk about Kelly Clarkson today. So let's just hang on for that. So let's start off with what I like to call a bed's eye view, sort of like a bird's eye view, but it's a bed's eye view. It's supposed to be cute, everybody. That's supposed to be cute. Okay. So I was diagnosed when I was 6 months old with what I consider to be the gift of cystic fibrosis. Now, you all know what cystic fibrosis is, I'm guessing. So you know that it's a genetic illness, that has a lot of lung infections and digestive issues, very, very glamorous illness that I have. So it might sound a little bit strange to say that I was born with the gift of cystic fibrosis, but I can honestly say, as young as 5 or 6 years old, I remember having a sense that this disease was not a mistake, or a curse, or something that I should feel bad about, but in fact, it was something that had been given to me on purpose. It was something that I was meant to learn from and to grow from. And I was pretty lucky, and let me just pause here and say, as I go through my childhood photographs, if you feel the need to ooh and ah at how adorable I am, please feel free. So I was pretty lucky. I had a pretty normal childhood up until I was 12, and let me just say this about that outfit. So that is not just a sweater, that's a sweater dress, because that was the 80s. Yes, thank you for the applause. And how many people in here, do we have any people in here who rocked that 80s poof? Oh my God, that's awesome. I have a lot of 80s poofers in the room, so I just want to take a second to brag a little bit about my 80s poof. It was so hairsprayed with Aquanet, of course, that the boys in junior high liked to throw coins at my head to see if they could get it stuck in the poof, which they did, and I made a lot of money that way. So it was a very profitable hairstyle. Now, one of the things I like about this photograph is that when I was born in 1973, my parents were told that I would live to be about 8 years old. Now, 4 winters ago, I went into Macy's, and I discovered that they were trying to sell me a sweater dress. You all know what that means, right? When fashion comes back around in your lifetime, it means you're officially old, exactly. So that was the moment I knew I had made it, right? I had beat CF because the sweater dress was back in style. So it was back then that I was rocking the poof and wearing the sweater dress. I had 3 weeks of intravenous antibiotics in the hospital, and my parents and I went into that environment in the way that I think a lot of patients and families do for the first time. I had absolutely no idea what to expect as a 12-year-old kid, and the only context that I really had was Hollywood. So I imagined that it would be a lot like being in a day spa. I imagined that I'd be laying there and people would be massaging my feet, and I'd be eating delicious, nutritious foods, and I'd get all kinds of rest. And I learned really quickly that being in a hospital is not a lot like being in a day spa. I also learned that I didn't really have the luxury of being able to just lay back and let people do things to me. I had to figure out how to be a participant in my care. I had to ask questions. I had to learn about what was going on around me, what was being given to me, and why, and what time. And if I had a question or I had a concern, I had to be willing to speak up. And I learned really quickly during that very first hospitalization that there is a very fine line between being an effective patient advocate for yourself and an offensive patient advocate for yourself. So one of the things I've dedicated my adult life to is trying to help patients and families navigate that fine line between being effective and offensive.